welcome back to Soul Light Reflections. Today, I figured that I would kind of dive into my own personal journey, which I feel like I don't necessarily do super often. A lot of times, I try to keep things relatively neutral while still kind of working in my own experience here and there. But this episode is more so about my own experience of navigating preconception, conception, and pregnancy. I figured I would just basically walk you through everything that I had been feeling and seeing and knowing prior to actual conception. And then we can basically just like build out a timeline. Now, everyone has a completely different journey when it comes to conception or whether or not you even want to have kids. And so I wanted to kind of walk you through what it looked like for me because I was actually the person that swore up and down that they would never have kids for the longest time. So let's start by backtracking a whole lot back to when I was like, I don't even know, maybe like 9, 10 years old. I said, I'm going to be a young parent. I'm going to be a cool parent. My parents were around 21 when they had me. And I always thought it was like cool to have younger parents. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to be a young parent. And then as I got closer to like, becoming a teenager, going through puberty, all of that, I was like, I do not want kids. I want nothing to do with having kids. I love kids. I don't want them for myself. And then I had a long-term relationship with my now ex-husband, and I knew for sure that I did not want to have kids with him. I got an IUD put in like right after we got married because I just really wanted to make sure. And so I had that IUD in for about 6 years. After I divorced from my ex-husband, after I went through that horrible relationship with a narcissist, I eventually met Max in 2021. And him and I both, we would talk about kids here and there, and we both felt like, I don't know, like maybe like way down the line, maybe not. And the more serious our relationship got, obviously we talked about it more. And we both agreed that we really, really liked our freedom, but that we could definitely see ourselves being like bomb ass parents. And we really were just a hard maybe for years. And then about a year ago, I started getting visitations during meditation, in dreams, just like randomly throughout the day of us having a child. And I had gotten maybe a couple like in the years prior of us having a child, but I had always kind of thought it was like a past life type thing, and maybe it was. There was one particular moment when we were both meditating, laying in bed together, and I remember having this vision of Max with a little boy on his shoulders. I was like, whoa, okay. Like, this is the first time I've really seen us with a child. And then another time that we were meditating together, I got this really strong feeling that one of the reasons that we are so back and forth in this iteration of this lifetime about having children is because we had a really traumatic miscarriage in another life. And so I would get these like little kind of like pings here and there for a couple of years, but it wasn't until about a year ago that I started getting like these really clear signs and really clear visitations. Now, the really interesting part about that is that it was always a little boy. I only saw a little girl one time, and this was like long before we conceived. So fast forward, that was like maybe like December 2024, January 2025 when I started having these, and they were really consistent from that point forward. And I would start having these conversations with Max saying like, hey, we need to talk more about this. I'm having these really strong feelings. And we kind of came to the conclusion of, yes, okay, I think that we should have at least one child. It feels like a kind of moral duty during our time on this planet to put a genuinely good human onto this earth. And we know that we would make such incredible parents. And we didn't necessarily know what it was going to look like. We didn't know if I could even get pregnant. I had been on birth control since I was like 15 years old. So we just kind of held that vision and we said, you know what? At some point, okay, we're open to it. And in February of last year, 2025, I got my IUD taken out. The reason I got it taken out is because it had been in for over 6 years. And I had come so far in my autoimmune journey. And I felt like this was the last piece to taking back my health, like fully. I needed to take this foreign object out of my body so that I could reconnect with my sacred feminine cycle and I could reconnect with my body in a different way. And so I just knew it was time. That being said, obviously, you take an IUD out, there's a higher chance of getting pregnant soon after. And so I had that conversation with Max, and he said, I really appreciate you bringing this to me and having a conversation. And it's your body. Like, you need to do what feels right for your body. And yes, I fully support you. So got it taken out, got my cycle for a few months. I started cycling with the new moon, which felt so resonant. My like witchy self loved that. And it was beautiful. It was so amazing to be able to reconnect to my cycle. And it was so different than when I had gotten my period 6 years prior. Like, very shortly after I got my IUD placed, I stopped getting periods altogether. I would maybe spot for a day or two, like 2 times a year during that time. And so this was nice to like really be able to connect to that. And it was wild the difference in my menstruation symptoms, because previously in my teenage years and in my early 20s, I had so much pain, the worst cramps, the worst fatigue, all of this stuff that like really was hard to deal with. And it's part of the reason that I went on birth control was to manage these symptoms. And after getting my IUD removed, I was in such a different place with my health and my wellness and my body and my mind and my spirit that I would get maybe a little bit of cramping, but it was so doable. It was so manageable. And I remember I posted online about this at some point during those few months when I was getting my cycle. And someone made a really good point, which I don't know if there's like, specific research around this, but it seems right to me, that I got my IUD placed shortly after I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And so my cycles before were really heavy, really painful, challenging mentally. But I also was not eating healthy. I just didn't have a healthy lifestyle. And now my lifestyle is so healthy and so clean and so active that the person that commented on my video said, when we are having a lot of toxic foods and toxic things in our body, that goes into our blood. And when we're shedding that toxic blood, it can lead to more symptoms. And that just made so much sense to me. A little like caveat side note that I really want to mention here is that when I got my IUD taken out, it was during a pretty tumultuous time around women's reproductive rights. I was talking to my provider before she was taking it out about how ready I was, and that it just kind of felt like the missing link to my healing after such a long time healing autoimmune disease and feeling so good now in my own body, and how grateful I was to be with such a great partner that I would be happy to reproduce with, and that I didn't used to have that. My practitioner took a moment and said, "Hey, I hear you and I'm holding space for that, and that's amazing. And I want you to also hold space for all of the women right now that are choosing to do the opposite because they're scared, because they don't know what's going to happen when it comes to reproductive rights in the near future." And I really appreciated that, because I did definitely already recognize that I have a privilege in having a partner who I fucking love and would be happy to reproduce with. And I also have a privilege in making a choice to take this thing out. And at the same time, I can hold loving space for the women who are doing something like getting it put in because they might not have access to birth control at a certain point soon. So I really appreciated her helping me to recognize even more of my privilege, because I think that a lot of times, like whether we try to or not, we tend to be a little bit selfish when it comes to our own like wellness and health practices, especially if we've been like around the block and we've been taking care of ourselves and we had a certain lifestyle for a while. We tend to forget just how privileged we are, for instance, to like buy organic food, to be able to purchase certain supplements that make our body feel good, to, drink clean water, things like that. And so this was another representation of that in my journey. All right. So moving on, again, February 2025, got the IUD taken out. Then I had continued to have these little like visitations and meditation and dreams, just like in waking life. And it was always of a little boy. So between about February and May, there had been multiple times that I had had conversations with Max, just kind of sharing the visitations that I'd had or the feelings that I'd had. And at some point I said, I feel like this is going to happen sooner than we think it is. And he's like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, I feel like this child is going to be with us during the wedding. And we were getting married in September. And he's like, whoa, what? And I was like, I don't know. That's just like a feeling I'm having that this child is going to be in my womb during our wedding. And he was like, whoa, okay. And like kind of needed a lot of time to wrap his mind around that because although he had recently come to the conclusion that like, yes, we both do want to have a child, I think that he was a lot more in the mindset of like maybe early next year, meaning like now, 2026, or like maybe even later. And his mentality was always, well, we have so many things coming up. You know, we have multiple festivals this year. We have the wedding. You're hosting a retreat in Joshua Tree. Like there's so many things going on. And I had to level with him and say, look, yes, and it is you and me. It is two complete extroverts together who love doing things, who love hosting things and going to events and going to festivals. We are always going to have a full docket, a full schedule. It's always going to be that way. And I think that it's really important for us to learn how, if we're going to have a child, to integrate a child into that. And it starts during pregnancy. And he was like, wow, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. So we had just kind of kept that conversation open, kept it going. And then in May, we went to Lightning in a Bottle Festival in California. And I don't necessarily need to fully go into the specific experience we had because it was very sacred to us. But I will say that he had this wild aha moment at the festival from something that had happened, and it sent us on this whole spiritual journey. We just kept getting so many signs and synchronicities everywhere we looked for like 2 hours. It was like pink and blue lights everywhere, like up in the trees, at like food vendors, at stages. It was just pink, blue, pink, blue, pink, blue, like all over the place. Just all these little signs. And we had another one of those spiritual experience moments similar to our engagement story. If you haven't listened to that, definitely go check out that episode. But similar experience to where we were like, oh my God, wait, and this is connected to that, and that's connected to this, and this is why this happened, and that's how. And it was wild. Maybe TMI, but I'm going to say it anyway. We had ended up having sex like earlier that evening, and both of us were like, whoa, wait a second. Like, what if like that was it? Like, that would be freaking insane. And I was like, yeah, but I'm like not ovulating. So that's like super, 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 super slim chance. And we were like, yeah, probably not, whatever. But it was wild because in that entire evening and the next morning, I literally felt the energy of our child within me. Like, I literally wanted to like shout it off the rooftops, like, I'm pregnant. Like, it literally felt on a spiritual level like I was getting that experience. It was wild. I didn't know how else to explain it. So fast forward, wasn't pregnant. And fast forward to the next month, Max was starting to slowly but surely warm up to this like intuitive knowing of divine timing that we were going to conceive in 2025. And in June, there was a possibility that it could have happened. I didn't realize I was ovulating. I firmly believe that it did not happen that month because it was not a fuck yes from both of us. The universe and our spirit baby were waiting for the moment when we both were like, fuck yeah, we're doing this. Not like, oh yeah, like at some point, kind of like one foot out the door, kind of just like wishy-washy. But no, it was, they were waiting. So the following month in July, we were at our absolute favorite festival in Washington called APOG, which was at the grounds that we had signed on to actually get married at in September. Again, maybe TMI, but this is part of the story. This is the real. We had sex July 4th, and I knew. I literally knew. I like had tears in my eyes afterwards because I just was like, oh my God, this is it. So later that evening, it was just the two of us walking from like one stage to another. And I stopped him for a second and I said, hey, I think that like we really need to be so intentional about this. And I think that the universe, our spirit baby, are waiting for like a fuck yes, let's do this, or like a not right now. And it needs to be from both of us. And I said, can we just like take a ceremonial moment between the two of us to decide? And if it's a not right now, like, okay. We both took a minute. We tuned into our like internal systems. We tuned into our higher self. We tuned into our intuition. And we looked at each other and he looked at me and he said, fuck yeah. And I said, fuck yeah. And we basically shot a fuck yes up into the universe. And we were just like, all right, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And we both were like, I still get chills. Oh my God. We both were like, could that really be it? Like us intentionally having this moment together saying, fuck yes. And that's it. Because the previous 2 months was not like a fuck yes from both of us. It was like, eventually, whatever it happens. So we go about the rest of our festival experience, whatever. And then it's a waiting game for a couple of weeks to find out if I get my period. I kind of intuitively already knew, but I didn't want to like psych myself up and then be really disappointed because I did really want it to happen. To that point, we had not like specifically tried, right? So I always have a hard time with the question of was this planned? Were you guys trying? And I'm like, first of all, that's a pretty invasive question to ask someone, because if we were like some couples that try really hard and it takes them years, like that's a really tough question to answer. Yeah, we've been trying for years. Like that's just not fair. So if you're listening to this and you've asked people that before, please don't. Honestly, it's not your fucking business. Sorry. If people want to offer up that information, they will. Anyway, so for us, we hadn't necessarily like specifically tried, right? We just were like leaving it open to the universe. We had an intention. For that couple of weeks, I kind of knew, but I didn't want to psych myself out and then get disappointed, because our biggest lesson in the last year has been detaching from outcomes, which I've talked about multiple times on this podcast. So I was like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Well, one night I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why am I awake? I usually sleep straight through the night. I'm like, this is so weird. Like, why am I waking up in the middle of the night and like not able to go back to sleep? And this happened for 3 nights in a row. I had the worst insomnia. I either couldn't fall asleep or I couldn't stay asleep. I'd wake up for like 2 or 3 hours just like sitting there like, oh my God, what is going on? And during that time, I started getting a rheumatoid arthritis flare up. And usually if I get a little bit of a flare up within the last like 3 or 4 years, I usually know exactly why. It's like, oh, I ate something that I wouldn't usually, or I like drink alcohol, or I haven't been sleeping enough. And this was like, I don't really know what's going on. Why all of a sudden am I having a flare up? And then a few days later, I had a dream that I was in the bathroom, took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And I woke up from that dream going like, huh, interesting. And I felt like there was a big reason that I had that dream. It felt like a very, very clear message. And then my logical brain was like, girl, it's 4 days before your missed period. Like, there's no way that a test would even be accurate right now. And I had a box of like 25 of those little like strips that you can test with. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. Let me just take one. Who cares? I have so many more. I went in the bathroom as soon as I woke up, took one. And it was like the hardest 5 minutes to wait in my entire life. And I looked and like, mind you, I didn't even wait the entire 5 minutes at first. And that second line started popping up real quick. And I was like, wait a second. So Max was still sleeping at this point. I text my friend Rachel and I'm like, oh my God. And I sent her a picture and she's like, you're pregnant. Oh my God. I was like, are you sure? And she's like, girl, that is a very clear line. So I go to the store. I get a second test, one of those like classic, like big chunky plastic tests with the blue cap on it. And I take that one. Also positive. Not quite as like very clear positive, because it wasn't my first pee of the morning and because those are less sensitive than the ones that I had, but I didn't know that at the time. But it was still positive. And I was like, wait a freaking second right now. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do? Like, how do I tell Max? Like, this is crazy. This shouldn't even be possible for these tests to be able to detect this early. And then I was looking it up and I found out that when HCG, like the hormone that these tests test for, is really high really quickly when you first get pregnant, it can cause an autoimmune flare up. And I was like, okay, well, that explains that. That also explains the insomnia out of nowhere. Like, must be. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to tell Max because I didn't really imagine it going this way, I guess. Quick little interruption to this episode for a pretty vulnerable share. My husband and I have been running a company called Lucid Hydration, which is an all-natural electrolyte beverage. It's a little stick of powder that you mix with your water. It is super clean, no artificial ingredients or other BS in there. And we actually are taking a little bit of a hiatus from our business because we really want to rebrand. We want to rework some things. We want to have a successful strategy for where we want to take this product. And with me being due with our first child in 2.5 months, we have decided that this is a good place to take a little hiatus. Now, we do have some stock still, and we are offering a beautiful discount for anyone who helps us get through the rest of this stock so that we can take that hiatus with confidence. If you are interested in helping us with that goal of selling out the rest of our product, I would be so grateful, and I would love to send you an extra little something for doing so. You can order at lucidhydration.com and use my code Rachel, RACHEL, for a sweet little discount. Then message me, let me know that you ordered so that I can include a nice little gift for you. We really appreciate every little bit of support. If you'd like to stay up to date on my retreats and my offerings, make sure you check out my website and you add yourself to my mailing list. My website is playfulembodiment.com, and you can find all of my current offerings, including local in-person events in the Seattle area, retreats out of state, and I have another one coming up internationally next year, and I'll be announcing that very soon. So if you want to stay up to date, make sure you join my mailing list as soon as possible. And I also want to remind you that while it's not something that I am always advertising, I do always offer one-on-one intuitive guidance sessions. This is an opportunity for us to chat just kind of like how we are now, but it's actually two-sided because we are on a Zoom call together, and we get to just kind of go through what is coming up for you, and I'm able to channel some messages from source, from your higher self, from your spirit guides, and we're able to just kind of get to wherever it is that you need to be by the end of that one session. So if you're interested in that, just reach out to me. You can email me, you can reach out to me on social media, and I would be happy to chat further and see if this is something that's aligned for you. The craziest part is that I tested a few days before we were going to Shambhala Music Festival in Canada, which, if you know Shambhala, it is like a week-long commitment. You're camping. It is like all day, all through the night, all through the wee hours of the morning. Like, it is a commitment of a festival, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's like our favorite place ever. But my plan originally, because I knew when I was supposed to miss my period, was to test and then tell him at Shambhala. But this was like days before, and I'm like, there's no way I can hold a secret until then. And so basically when he woke up, I kept my cool, and I was like, I really want to get outside today. Because I was like, I don't want to just like tell him in our apartment. Like, I want to like go somewhere cool. So I'm like, I want to get outside today. He's like, okay, cool. Like, where do you want to go? And I was like, I want to go on this hike. He's like, all right. So we go to this hike that's super close to our house. And I didn't really know how or when I was going to do it. My original plan was to get to the top of the hike and then to set up our tripod and then to like whisper in his ear and like tell him, because I wanted a video of the moment. But we ended up going like off the trail onto this like side trail that was kind of like bushwhacking. And then it led us out to this really beautiful overlook. And I was like, oh shit, this is actually like perfect. This is beautiful. So I set up my little tripod with my phone in it. And I actually had a little microphone, like a little clip-on one. And so I put one on my shirt because I wanted the camera to be able to like hear the conversation. We had Bolly, our dog, with us. And as I was setting it up, he was like eating some sort of snack. I think it was trail mix. She was looking up at him so cute. And I was like, oh, like give her some. And he's like, oh no, it's trail mix. Like she can't really have this. And he was like, get her treats. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I go over and I like get her little bag of treats and I come back over. So I start making her do tricks. I'm like, okay, sit. Okay, lay down. Like, high fives, shake, that sort of thing. And finally, I'm like, wait a second, this might be the way to do it. I'm going to incorporate Bali into telling him. And so I make her do all these tricks. And then on the last one, I say, now say, mommy's pregnant. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, wait, what? Like, when did you test? And I was like, this morning. And he's like, oh my God. And it was such a sweet and tender moment. And he was like literally speechless. And he was like, yeah, I was thinking like it was probably time for you to test soon, but oh my God. And yeah, it was a really, really sweet moment. And it turned out perfectly, but it wasn't necessarily the way that I was like planning on doing it. And so, yeah, from that point, we're like, all right, we're really doing this. Like, we are in it. We're doing it. So we go to Shambhala Music Festival. I was only like 5 weeks pregnant, and it was perfect because I wasn't feeling any sort of symptoms yet. And I was like, thank God. I had like super, super mild nausea, like here and there, but it was so doable. And the biggest symptom that I had is like I had to take more breaks, like rest a little bit more. But yeah, it was perfect. And then a few weeks go by, we have our 9-week appointment with a midwife. And that is when they do the first ultrasound. They make sure that the pregnancy is viable and that everything looks good on the first ultrasound. Everything was great. At that 9-week appointment, we chose to do what's called an NIPT test, which they are able to test for chromosomal abnormalities and also tell you the sex of your baby. So we were able to find out really early. And one morning, when I was just up with pregnancy insomnia, I got an email that my test results were in. And I had gotten a few different blood work tests done, so I didn't know which one this was per se. And then I was like, oh, wait, I think this is the one that tests for all the chromosomal stuff. Now I clicked on it thinking that there was no way that they were going to put the gender at the very top. I was like, why would they do that? Like they're going to put it at the bottom. So I click on it and immediately it just goes female and then lists all the other chromosomal things that it tested. And I'm like, oh, okay. And Max is still like dead asleep. I was super, super nauseous, had crazy insomnia. And so I just go out to the couch and I'm just like laying there, just like, oh my God, a girl? Like we thought for sure it was a boy. We had always seen ourselves as boy parents. We had seen ourselves with one child, a boy. And we knew that we wanted the name to be Grayson Sage. Like we knew. And all these visitations I had was boys. And so when I saw that, I was like, what do you mean? So when he finally woke up, he came out and he's like, hey, like, how are you feeling? Whatever. And I'm like, not good. I have really bad insomnia and nausea. And I said, oh, by the way, our test results came. And he's like, you looked, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, it's a girl, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. He was like, well, that was anticlimactic. Like, I thought we were going to look together. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, yes, we were. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like up and just clicked it. And yeah. So it literally took us probably like 2 weeks to like metabolize that. Oh my God, we're having a fucking girl. Like, what do we do? What do we do with a girl? We've only ever seen ourselves with one little boy. Now we are just so over the moon and so grateful. And there are so many things that I could say about having a girl that I'm so excited about, but it's just not anything I ever like saw for myself. And that's the way it goes. Universe hands you what you need, not necessarily what you want or think you're going to get. And then we did a gender reveal at our wedding for everyone else to find out, but we kept our lips sealed for literally 3 weeks until the wedding because we didn't even tell our parents. Like we wanted everyone to find out at the same time. And I'm so proud of us for that. But it also gave us some good time to like work through it, and the reason that I share this part of it is because I think that it's very real to be like a little bit disappointed when you first find out the gender of your child. And I think that that's not necessarily talked about enough. You can feel definitely guilty for being like, oh my God, like it's a healthy baby. Why am I disappointed? But sometimes we have to work through that. And like, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you love your child any less. It doesn't mean that you are any less connected to your child. It's just that sometimes like our human brains get so connected to a certain idea that we have to process through and come to terms with it. And then we can also learn to love the other outcome, the outcome we didn't necessarily expect. So from that point, we're like, okay, we're having a girl. Grayson Sage could theoretically be a girl's name, but I was like, no, if we ever had another kid, which we still don't know, but if we ever did and we had a boy, I would want it to be Grayson Sage, and I'd be really bummed if I like had already used that name on a girl. Now, years ago, probably 10 plus years ago, for some reason, the name Eliana came to me. I don't know how or when or where. It just has always been in my mind of like, if I ever had a girl, I would name her Eliana. And I had told Max this years ago, and he was like, wow, that's really pretty. Once we found out we were having a girl, I was like, do you still like the name Eliana? And he's like, actually, yeah. Like, I think that's actually the perfect name. And so we had decided that her name was going to be Eliana. And we didn't know really what her middle name was going to be, but we wanted something with one syllable because, I don't know, it just flows better. Max's mom's middle name is Rae, R-A-E. And we didn't necessarily just want the same exact middle name as her, but we liked it. And then we were thinking, oh, Rae, like a ray of sunshine. And then we thought about how the reason that we chose the venue for our wedding was because the final sunrise set at that festival, it was like 5 or 6 in the morning, and the way the sunlight was coming through the trees in like these beautiful godlike rays, we stood there and stared at it and said, oh my God, I wonder if it's possible to get married here. Like, this was long before we were even like actually thinking about getting married, but we were like, that would be so crazy. And that's just always kind of stuck with us, something very special about this property. And so that was one. Another thing that we were thinking about was the contrast between the sun rays, because they did the same exact thing during our ceremony at our wedding. However, the whole morning of our wedding, it was raining, like literally pouring all night, all morning. And I'm like, no freaking way. Everything is outside for our wedding. Like, there is no way it's going to be like this. But then perfectly before the ceremony, sun comes out, everything dries up. It was just amazing. So the contrast of the rain and the sun rays. And so we landed on Rain, R-A-Y-N-E, because it has that contrast. The sound of it is the rain, and the spelling of it is the rays of sunshine. So yeah, we landed on Eliana Rain. And then we have gotten confirmation after confirmation about her name. So I wanted to share a couple of the synchronicities because I don't know, I feel like when we hear certain synchronicities from other people, we start to realize how often synchronicities actually come up in our own life when we might be overlooking them. The first synchronicity that we had was right after our wedding. So we had come back from our wedding. At this point, I was like 13 and a half weeks pregnant, I think. And we had unloaded a million things from the car and the RV into our apartment, and it had taken us a bunch of trips. And we had just gone down to like lock everything up and then come back upstairs. And there was a piece of tiger's eye, like the rock, right in the center of our doormat. And we were like, okay, where did this come from? Like, we didn't put it here. We would have noticed what on all these trips that we've taken back and forth that there was something just in the middle of our doormat where we're walking. I was like, Eliana? Interesting. So we look up the meaning of tiger's eye, and it is all about grounding and balance and warding off negative energy and attracting abundance and aiding in manifestation and just positive energy flow. And it was really beautiful because we recognized that in us picking up this piece of tiger's eye and walking through our doorway with it, it was like her signifying, like, I am with you guys. Like, I'm right here. I'm doing this with you. Like, literally taking her with us through this door, this threshold into our next iteration of life. Then we were at the retreat that I hosted in Joshua Tree. We did a community gift exchange where everyone brings a gift, puts it up on the altar, everyone chooses numbers, and it is so wild the way that every gift that's up there finds the perfect person. And these are like super random gifts. Like, I want to say one was like a candle, one was a necklace, one was like a little figurine, like all different kinds of things. The one that I chose was a little piece of black tourmaline, which is another stone. And I was like, oh, wow, interesting. And I look at Max across the circle and I'm like, Ellie? The girl who had gifted this was like, oh my God, that's crazy that you say that and that you like are saying the name Ellie. She's like, the story behind this is that I was going through my stuff recently, kind of like getting rid of some stuff. And she's like, I found this stone in my drawer and I couldn't figure out where it came from. And she's like, I know my stones. I know what I got. I know my crystals. I know my stones. I don't recognize this one. And she's like, and when I was going through it, I was like, the only person that I feel like could have put it there is my sister Ellie. And I was like, oh my gosh, wild. Another was when I called the birthing center that we will, God willing, give birth at. The receptionist that answered said, hi, this is Ellie. How can I help you? And I was like, what? I guess these two stories make more sense if I tell you that like one of the reasons that I've always really liked the name Eliana is because I love the nickname Ellie. And so that's why these like Ellie things keep coming up. We call her Ellie Belly right now. Another synchronicity about her name was that there was a song, this like pretty heavy EDM song that one day Max was like dancing around the living room to, making a joke about how like Ellie's gonna be like a UFC fighter. And like there was this song called Make It Rain. And he's like, yeah, she's like gonna come out. She's got her hood. Like, and it's like, I'm gonna make it rain, bitch. And he was like doing this whole like bit, this whole skit to it. And this was like a couple months ago. And I was just laughing, whatever. Well, fast forward about a month and a half after that had happened, I was having such a hard day. Like literally, I think one of the hardest days of my life. Like, no joke. Emotionally, things just, nothing was going my way. Everything felt like it was crumbling. And I was in the car and I was bawling my eyes out and I was driving and I was talking to her and I was like, girl, I know that you are like mostly still in the spiritual realm right now. Like you are not fully on this planet. And I know that you can see things so much better than we can see them. So I really need you to like give me some sort of sign right now that everything's going to be okay, that we're going to get through this, that you can see on to the other side already for us. Like it's going to be okay. And I said, I'm human and I will probably doubt any sign that you give me. So I need it to be super, super clear. I need it to be like more than 4 repeating numbers in a row. She tends to talk to me in threes. So I was like, if you could give me like 4 threes in a row or more, or you could show me something with your name in it. And so, of course, my human brain is like from that point on, just looking at license plates and like billboards, just looking for anything like repeating numbers or any sort of sign. And then I start talking to her again and my spirit guides. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm looking and it's not going to happen when I'm looking. So please just like have it happen when I'm not expecting it. Have it happen when there is no way that I could deny that this is you. Now, I will say I was kind of doubting it a little bit because usually when I have conversations like this with my spirit guides, I am searching way too hard and the sign doesn't ever come through, at least when I'm paying attention. And so I was kind of like, oh, well, we'll see. I don't know if I'm actually going to get a sign. So I'm listening to this mix that comes on my SoundCloud, which was by Justin Martin. And he's like a really like chill house DJ, like vibey music. And I was listening to this mix and I got like 15 minutes in and I'm like, okay, I need to switch it up. Like that helped me to calm my nervous system. My nervous system feels like pretty chill now. Thank goodness. I'm feeling a little bit better. I need something a little bit more now. So I click next. And the very next song after that was that Make It Rain song that Max had played like a month and a half prior. Mind you, he didn't play it on my phone when he played it. He played it on his phone, on his SoundCloud account. And this was a very specific remix of this song. Like it's not a well-known song is what I'm trying to say. It has like under 1,000 likes. Like it's just, there's no reason that it would have come on for any other reason on my SoundCloud. And it came on and I start bawling because it says Make It Rain, like her middle name. And I loved that because to me, I'm like, it would have been so clear, obviously, if like Ellie or Eliana, But the fact that it was like no rain, and the fact that Max had, done this whole thing to that song, and it immediately brought up that really good memory for me. It not only was confirmation to me that she was listening, that she's there, that that is her name, but it also brought confirmation to me that like I know how to regulate my nervous system. And it brought this like really joyful memory and allowed me to bring myself to a very different mental state. So that was super beautiful. And throughout this whole pregnancy journey, it has felt so incredibly intuitive and natural and like just kind of like a duh. It doesn't feel like I need to like listen to all these things and read all these books and this and that. It feels very intuitive. And I am very grateful. I've been working with this incredible birthing coach virtually. I do one-on-one calls with her every week. She's absolutely amazing. She is a doula and holistic birth educator. She's also a labor and delivery nurse. She has really helped me so much in various aspects of getting ready for this beautiful birth portal ego death that is inevitably going to happen when I'm in labor. And in addition to that, yeah, there are a couple of like podcasts I've listened to or books here and there, but more than anything, what's helped me is to completely shut out the outside noise because there is so much information out there. And I have chosen to do things completely like holistically and intentionally when it comes to my journey because everything leading up to that has been so holistic and intentional. So why would I make this any different? Now, this episode is already getting pretty long, so I will save it for another episode to talk about like specific things that I've done during my pregnancy and specific things that have impacted my journey and that sort of thing. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this part of the journey, like all of the things that have been so synchronistic and universally guided. And one last thing that I wanted to mention is that originally I was planning on giving birth in a hospital with a midwife. I'm very blessed to have a low risk pregnancy with a very low possibility of birth complications. My original plan was a hospital birth with a midwife because I am very blessed to have a low risk pregnancy. I can use a midwife instead of an OB. But I wanted the safe holds of a hospital, and I know a lot about any other way to birth. I knew that home birth was an option, but we live in a condo and I was like, I would not feel comfortable to like fully have the the experience that I would want to be able to allow myself to have in a place where I know other people might be able to hear me. And through working with my birthing coach, I was able to put aside some fears that I had around not having a child in a hospital. And there was other circumstances that came to play that actually were really stressful in the moment, but were a huge indicator from the universe of like, just pay attention, just check out a birthing center, just see what they're about, see if it might work out for you. We ended up going and doing a consultation at a birthing center and falling in love with it. If you're not familiar, a birthing center is essentially like a step between a home birth and a hospital birth. It is a facility that you go to. They have midwives on staff that will be there for you the whole time. They do have certain medical things that they can do, such as administering an IV for fluids, suturing up to a second degree tear, or, newborn vitamin K, eye ointment, that sort of thing. But other than that, they don't give epidurals. They don't have an anesthesiologist on staff. They can't do like a C-section or anything. Any of that would be a transfer to a hospital. We had this tour of this birthing center and completely fell in love and decided to transfer our care there. And we have been so happy and loving it. And I just am so excited to be able to give birth there. I feel so blessed to be able to make that decision for me and my baby and my family. So that's the route that I went. And I could have very well just kind of held on to, nope, I want the safe holds of a hospital and this and that. But the more that I realized the type of birth that I want to have is just not super common in a hospital. And I could go on about this forever with all that I've learned recently. But majority of medical interventions that happen in a hospital, such as C-sections, happen because of unnecessary medical interventions to start, such as a membrane sweep or getting induced, and a variety of other strategies that hospitals tend to use to try to speed up the process. Now, the thing is, especially because this is my first birth, I got to give my body a little bit more time to like really figure out what it needs to do to get this baby out. And I think that like hospitals are just so used to turn and burn, and like they get paid by the birth, not by the hour. So they're just trying to get you in and out of there as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, the medical system is so broken, and they're just looking at dollar signs. You're not like, they're not really looking at you as a person unless you get a really awesome practitioner here and there. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so that is our plan as far as birth. I plan to give a physiological, natural birth, God willing. We will have our doula there. And I have been doing so much to be able to prep my mind and my body for that process because it is very intense. It is an ego death. There's so much to be said for it. And if you've been through it before, no matter how it was that you gave birth, you're a fucking badass. And women are so freaking cool and powerful and amazing. And I don't think that there's one way to do it that's right, one way to do it that's wrong. I think that we all have the journey that we need. I love that most people have birthing plans. My coach likes to call it a birthing vision, which I love because a lot of times, you know, it's that classic phrase, we make plans and God laughs. Like sometimes we get so attached to a plan that we think that anything else is a failure. And I really don't want to believe that. I have been prepping my mind and my body for like, yeah, maybe worst case scenario is I get emergency transferred to a hospital and I have to have an emergency C-section. Does that make me any less of a woman? Does that make me any less of a mother? No, absolutely not. It might even strengthen the bond, you know, because you went through this like really traumatic thing together and now you get to heal from it. So anyway, there are so many other aspects of birth prep and preconception, all the things that I could get into. But for today, I just really wanted to focus on like how intuitive this process has been for me and for Max, for both of us, and how beautiful it is when you get to be so intentional and prep your mind and your body in a really positive manner and actually pay attention to the synchronicities that come through, all of the signs, all of these like really beautiful ways that the universe is showing us, yes, this is in divine timing. Yes, this is your time. So as always, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so, so much. Wherever you are, whoever you are, I know you are doing such an amazing job during these crazy freaking times in our world. Continue to keep your nervous system regulated. Continue to listen to your body and hone in on your intuition. And until next time, keep shining, keep aligning, and we'll talk super soon.